Hello. Tonight I'm going to go over some World War I gear I've got. Seen lots of videos in reference to the gear of World War II on YouTube, but nobody ever really talks much about World War I. I'm personally getting involved into World War I reenacting in honor of my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather served with the 80th Division, the 314th Machine Gun Battalion, B Company. Was in the trenches in October of 1918 all the way up to the armistice on November 11th, 1918. He didn't come home from France until May of 1919. As you may or may not know, the United States Congress declared war on Germany April 6, 1917. Our first troops reached France that July of 1917. Again, the war lasted until the armistice was signed November 11, 1918. After the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the United States Congress did not ratify the treaty. We didn't agree with the terms and conditions of the treaty, so we sought our own separate peace with Germany in 1921. So officially, World War I for the United States did not end until 1921. I'm going to go over with you guys some of the gear and equipment that I have accumulated, and I'll even show you some original gear that was my great-grandfather's in comparison to what I've got, to see how much the replicas and reproductions are very close to the real deal. There's a few items I still haven't gotten. I'm still waiting on my gas mask. I have a reproduction gas mask bag I'll share with you, but I'm kind of using it more or less as a musette bag to carry extra ammunition in. With that being said, I also plan to show you how to properly pack a Model 1910 haversack. I've seen several videos on how to pack a Model 1928, which essentially is the same haversack, minor differences, and I'll go over what those differences are. And in addition to that, there's really no right or wrong way to pack it, but I'll show you what I do and what works for me, what goes in it. I've also seen comments people have left on other videos in regards to, well, it's nice seeing how you pack it, but how does it go together? So I plan to show you how it goes together. With that being said, let me get started. First thing I've got to show you is some uniform gear. Again, various different items, and I don't claim to be the know-all of World War I gear, but this is what I've got, and I'll even tell you where I've got it from and my thoughts on my reviews of that company. This is the Model 1912 wool uniform. The first part of the uniform is the breeches. Difference between breeches and pants is the length that they are. The end of the pants, or the end of the breeches I mean, come together and they're laced together right here. When a soldier wears them, they're actually met right at calf level. They don't quite go beyond the calves. You'll also notice here on the breeches the belt I have. The belt for World War I soldiers typically was a lot narrower than World War II. They had a little thicker webbing belt. But essentially it's just a common metal belt buckle that you just latch through. Beyond the pants, excuse me, and you might have to mind the camera moving around, but underneath the tunic, your common shirt. Most soldiers wore a plain white cotton t-shirt underneath, and then they wore this shirt. This is a wool shirt. Unlike many others, it only buttons halfway down and then it stops. The purpose was they felt that if you had the option to be able to button it all the way up, soldiers would kind of just go around unbuttoned and show off and not be in proper uniform. And General Pershing, who was the commanding officer of the United States Forces, was real strict on discipline and real strict about military professionalism and how you looked. On my shirt here I have sewn an 80th Division shoulder insignia. Again, this is a 1/2 inch from the seam of the shoulder, which is regulations. Of course, for reenacting purposes, most companies and outfits require no markings of any units. I'm participating in a unit portraying the 80th Division, which coincides with my great-grandfather's division. I found this patch and I kind of wanted to put it on my uniform in honor of my great-grandfather. I felt that since this shirt's going to be worn under the tunic, nobody would really know and nobody would really care. Little history about shoulder insignias, though. The 26th Division was one of, if not the first, division to start using shoulder insignias, and that was in World War I. Pershing, after inspecting the troops and seeing it, liked it, so went ahead and wrote out a general order allowing all the divisions to come up with a creative emblem to represent their division. The 80th Division is the Blue Ridge. From that point on, and at the end of the war, all the divisions started to adopt the shoulder insignia. The shoulder insignia is more common and more prominently found during World War II. Next, I have here the Model 1912 wool tunic. Now, this is the classic doughboy uniform look. It's got the high stiff collar. It's got the collar disc. Kind of zoom in if I can. The one that's on the left indicates it's the U.S. They have various different types of collar disc that's worn on the left. It's usually U.S. Forces or USNA for the National Army or USNG for the National Guard. When the Army was developed in 1917 and we went to war, we had a standing force of about 127,000 men. Within 9 months, we grew our ranks up to over 4 million men, with half of that number deployed to France. The Army itself, all the divisions, were split into 3 groups. You had the U.S. Regular Army, the U.S. National Guard, and the U.S. National Army. The National Army was composed of enlisted or drafted men. The Regular Army was the standing forces. National Guard, well, I think that's kind of self-explanatory. The other side here, I have the cross rifles and the letter of the company I'm in. This particular unit, I'm in the 318th F Company of the 80th Division. Again, this is the closest unit I could find for reenacting that my great-grandfather was in. He was in the 314th Machine Gun Battalion. The machine gunners would have also had the crossed rifles. It would probably have said an MG to indicate machine gun. I've seen some of these collar discs also having MG on the top and then the letter of the company at the bottom. The uniform just buttons up. It's got the great U.S. Army seal on the buttons. It's also got a really nice hidden pocket in the sleeve right there on the inside. It's got the double breast pockets and then the 2 pockets on the waist. These uniforms, when they were worn, they're really tapered and they really are cut to fit the men. So these things would drop just below when you normal clothes, about where your pants pockets are, tapered in and kind of give a bit of an hourglass shape, and kind of odd when you think of it nowadays, because you think, wow, sexy girls are the ones that should have hourglass shapes, but soldiers did, and it was kind of to show that they were slim and fit, completely opposite of what I am. When they first went to combat, the first soldiers, they had the campaign hat. This is actually a drill sergeant's campaign hat from the 1970s, but it's pretty similar to what they had. The way you can really tell an official original World War I is they would have 5 rows of stitching right here at the end of the brim. The cords, I've got the light blue on, indicating infantry. They were all color-coded for the various branches, or not branches, but units or jobs, I guess you could say. You'd have gold for officers, red for artillery, light blues, the infantry. When the soldiers got to France, they often found that they had no place to stow those campaign hats when they were issued their helmets, so a lot of them were sent back stateside and were chopped up to make felt wool slippers for injured soldiers. So that's kind of an interesting thing. What they did get instead was an overseas cap. They modeled these off the French. The French were wearing them. These became quite popular. Again, it's got a U.S. collar disc on the end of the hat. You see these a lot more in World War II, but again, you know, these can easily be folded up, stowed away for storage purposes, and a lot easier to handle than that big campaign hat. Now, once they were on the trenches in the front, they were issued the helmet. This is the Model 1910 steel helmet, often referred to as a Brodie helmet. This was a copy of the British. There are differences with the American Model 1917 helmet and the British Brodie helmet. The biggest difference would be the liner, the way the liners are. The chin strap here is one piece. It slides to tighten or loosen, but it doesn't buckle. So you would never actually see a soldier wearing a helmet with the chin strap unbuckled in World War I. That's kind of a thing Hollywood made up. Later variants of this helmet after the war changed the liner, changed the chin strap, and they did have a chin strap in the 1920s and 30s that buckled together. But in World War I they were a solid one piece. Just to give you guys too also an original comparison, this is my great-grandfather's helmet. Now, he's got the insignia of his division painted and the insignia of the machine gun battalion, B for B Company. There's conflicting reports of whether or not the soldiers actually painted the helmets in the trenches or had the insignias painted while they were in the trenches. A lot of people tend to think that they were more plain and simple, such as my reproduction one here. But I've seen some photos indicating some units actually did have insignias painted while they were in the trenches, and even before they were sent overseas. So it's up to debate, but regulations for reenacting, they tell me I can't paint the insignias on them, and kind of sucked because I was really wanting to match those insignias on mine in honor of my great-grandfather. I've got a piece of wire attached on his helmet because I've been hanging it on the wall in my room. But if you look here, the chin strap actually broke. Just old, dry rot. You know, this stuff's almost 100 years old. But the liners are pretty much dead on. They both have this netting and the wool padding underneath, kind of protect your head. You can see the netting, the wool padding. Misconception, belief about the helmets too. They were not bulletproof. They were not designed to deflect bullets. If you got shot in the head while wearing a helmet, that bullet was going to penetrate through these and most likely kill you. Really, the whole purpose and idea of these helmets were to protect your head from shrapnel from artillery shells that exploded high in the air, or rocks and debris being thrown at you from artillery blowing up. Yeah, it sucked to be in the trenches and get hit by a big chunk of dirt and rock and get knocked unconscious, mistaken to be dead. So they decided, hey, we need to do something about that, and they started issuing steel helmets. The British and the French were the first. The Germans had the pickle hobble, which is the famous classic spiked helmet. And in 1916, they kind of realized, hey, these aren't really protective, so the pickle hob went on, and the steel helmets came out. Next, I'm going to move on. I'm going to show you the boots, some of the foot gear. These are model 1917 trench boots. They're real similar to the World War II rough outs, as they call it. It's the rough side of the leather turned out. These are hand sewn, triple stays on the back. These have wooden soles. They're triple soled, and then mine actually have a heel plate. It's a metal plate, and then I've got the hobnails for traction. This is exactly like what the doughboys wore in the trenches and was wearing on the long marches all over France. In 1918, some of these started to wear out, and new issued ones were given out, and very similar. A couple differences. The biggest difference is they added a steel toe iron and reinforced some of the stitching on it. They called them the model 1918s, the Pershing boot. They were real popular, and it was pretty much the predominant boot in the AEF in France in 1918. But this is what they had just before the Pershing boots. With mine, I was advised to take some Snow Seal and dub these. These are kind of a natural tan, natural leather color. I was told the Snow Seal will kind of darken them up, but really didn't. I've just been told it'll just take time and wearing them and weathering them. But if you buy any of these, I definitely recommend take Snow Seal or some kind of waterproofing to them, because they are leather. Also, I got mine at a company called Civil War Boots. Miltmore Harness, I believe, was the company. They're kind of pricey, but quality made, really nice. In addition to the boots, this is probably the most classic thing you see in thinking of a doughboy. These are called the puttees. The puttees are nothing but a wool leg wrap. It's like a big giant wool ace bandage. They wrapped around your ankle and up your calves to the bottom of your breeches. Remember, I told you your breeches cut off at your calf. Originally, the soldiers wore different kinds of canvas or leather leggings, very similar to what was worn in World War II and even before World War I in the Spanish-American War. What the soldiers found was, once they got into the trenches, just the mud and everything, those leggings really didn't help protect you and didn't provide any warmth or support to your feet and your legs and your ankles. So the leggings went and the puttees were issued. Again, this was copied off of the British Army. The British actually copied this off of the Indian, and I mean the continent, or not the continent, the country in Southeast Asia, India. You got to remember that was a British colony at that time. So they just kind of wrap these things up. It's a pain in the butt to wrap them. They're kind of long, but once they're on, they're on. They don't tend to go anywhere. Show you some of the basic weaponry. This right here is the workhorse of the AEF. This was the model 1917 .30 caliber Enfield rifle, often mistakenly called the P-17. It is an Enfield rifle. It was made here stateside, however. The story behind this rifle was when the United States entered the war, the Model 1903 Springfield rifle was the standard rifle of the military. The British Enfield was the British rifle, and they designed a pattern 14 rifle in 1914. The war broke out. They couldn't produce enough of these pattern 14 rifles. They were making the SMLE Mark IIIs, so they contracted with Winchester and Remington Arms to make the pattern 14 rifle for the British. When 1917 came and the United States entered the war, we didn't have enough of the Springfields. Like I said earlier, we went from 127,000 men to over 4 million men in 9 months. We didn't have enough rifles to arm them. So instead of turning Remington and Winchester and Eddystone, which was owned by Remington, instead of having them gear up to make more Springfield 1903s, they just went to those companies and said, hey, that pattern 14 rifle you're making, rechamber that in the 30-06 American round and make us as many as you can and as quickly as you can. And this is where you got the pattern 17 mistakenly called, but the official name is US 30 caliber model of 1917 Enfield rifle. It's got a safety on it right here. It's a cock on close action. Can't tell if you can see this clearly. Mine is actually a Remington made. Winchester made the least, Remington was the second, and Eddystone made the most. I took mine, I took a white crown and filled in the markings on my ladder sights and my markings so I can read them better. The ladder sight especially improves. This was a really nice feature that these rifles had for long distance shooting. Springfields did not have a rear sight. They kind of had a ladder sight more up in front of the breech. When closed, these also have a peep sight, a peephole sight. In addition to, because this was originally made for the British 303 round, these rifles were designed to hold 5 rounds, but when they chambered them for 30-06, they found that they had a little extra room in the magazine, so these rifles actually could hold 6 rounds versus the 5, but the standard stripper clip for the military was a 5-round stripper clip, and that's what was most commonly used. In addition to the rifle, this is a model 1917 Enfield car no buckle sling. This is the canvas sling, real common in them. You often see them with the 1903 leather slings, which were also really common. On the end of the rifle here, you had the model 1917 bayonet. This is a 16-inch bayonet. I've got it in the scabbard right here, which I'll show you later what I'm going to do with that. But set this down, and if you can't tell, I'm holding the camera. Alright. This has got the U.S. flaming bomb on the side for the U.S. Ordnance, and then it's a model 1917 stamped with Remington as the maker. The bayonet will slide right over the breech, and then you have your bayonet lug right here. There is a little push button spring loaded clip on the hilt of the bayonet. Voila. Just effectively turned your bolt-action rifle into a giant spear. Perfect to kill Fritz and any other Hun that came into your trench. Something a lot of people don't really think about, and this is part of the horror of World War I. A lot of the times the soldiers would get the order to fix bayonets before they'd go over the top into no man's land and make frontal assaults, and giant waves of men armed with their rifle, bayonet fixed, running across, like I said, no man's land, maze of shell craters and barbed wire and basically utter destruction, and they'd be running headfirst into German machine gun fire, which just would wipe them all out, essentially. Usually the Germans would do the same thing. They'd fix their bayonets and run across no man's land trying to attack Allied trenches and get wiped out. That's pretty much how World War I was fought. The Germans did develop infiltration tactics and the use of their stormtroopers, where they would have more squad-sized men go out and bypass strong points and attack. You hear of the famous trench raids both sides did, where they'd have, again, a small group of men, usually 4 or 5, go out at night, usually under the cover of darkness, and try and attack a small portion of the trench, and basically they'd probe for weaknesses within the line. The next item I have to show is a famous weapon developed just before the war started. The war broke out in Europe in 1914. This is the model 1911 Colt 45. Now this particular one is a reproduction blank gun. This is made by a company called Bruni. It's the Bruni 96. It's an Italian company. I changed the grips out on mine. They came with plain wood stock grips. The ones I've got on here are wood double checkered walnut. This is more of like what you would find on a Colt 45. This is also supposed to be a reproduction of the model 1911 A1, which didn't come out until after the war. This was more predominant in World War II, but it's rather hard to find reproduction stuff for World War I. I could have bought a real gun to use, but real model 1911s from World War I would cost up to almost $1,200 or more. Seen that some of them even go up for around $8 grand just for the gun, and I'm on a tight budget, so I really don't want to be shooting blanks through a real firearm, that expensive of a firearm. So I just went ahead and bought this Bruni 96 reproduction. They cost about 120 bucks. These Brunis are actually, instead of a 45 caliber, they actually hold 8mm blanks. The manual says that the magazine can hold 10 rounds, but an actual Colt 45 held 7 rounds, so I just went ahead and loaded up 7 rounds in my mag. It's all metal. One of the biggest differences between this and a real one is the lack of a safety on the back of the grip. They do, however, have a safety right here to lock the slide in place so that the hammer won't fire. They also have this slide right here to lock the slide back. Set the camera back down again and this is a single action versus a double action, where I could pull the trigger and the gun will cock on its own. Once these things are loaded and fire, however, they are a semi-automatic gun, just like the real Colt 45. The blowback will recock the gun for me as the round is being, the spent round casing is being ejected. Really nice gun. I was actually kind of impressed, despite many bad reviews I've read online after the fact I bought the gun. So haven't actually shot this thing yet. Can't wait to, and I'm kind of excited and looking forward to doing that. I also have, in addition, this is an original 45 pistol magazine pouch. They held 2, and I have 2 spare magazines for mine. These are lift the dot snaps, real common on World War I gear, and you found these also on World War II gear. A lot of the times with World War I gear, you find kind of a combination mix between Civil War, Spanish American, and early World War II gear. In fact, World War II, when it first broke out, a lot of the gear that our forces were using was leftover surplus gear from World War I. The Marines in particular were really well equipped with surplus World War I. Next I have to show you, this is a model 1912 pistol belt. And you can see I've got a canteen cover. This is a 1910 canteen cover already attached. Got the first aid pouch. This is a model 1910 first aid. They have, now this one actually says 1904. And they just have a little tin first aid kit, which inside would be your bandages. And by the time World War II came out, they pretty much had the same stuff, but again, there was some differences. A company from the Carlisle Barracks in Pennsylvania actually were manufacturing these for World War II. They're roughly about the size of an Altoids mint can. Here at the end of the belt, there's a buckle, a little snap button. What that is actually for is this magazine pouch. You can slide it through, and then there's a button, snap button on the pouch that would snap in place. They just hook together. I'm actually keeping my magazine pouch off because I've been keeping it in the waist pockets of my tunic, and I'll show you why just in a second. Next piece I have, this is the model 1917, model 1910 also. They were pretty much the same. This is the dismounted cartridge belt. I've got on here another model 1910 canteen cover, and in this one I actually have my canteen. Aluminum canteen. World War I, they had all aluminum caps on it with a cork in it. This was a reproduction made by a company called What Price Glory. They do predominantly World War II stuff. When you buy them, they'll give you the option if you want the black plastic cap that was in World War II or the aluminum for World War I. My reenacting, I'm doing World War I, so that's why I chose the aluminum. However, I was kind of disappointed with this. It's kind of hard to see maybe, but they have stamped dates on them from What Price of Glory, and they stamped this one 1942. But when it's in the cover, nobody knows, nobody sees, who cares. I also have, if I can dig it out, the canteen cup. Again, same cup that was used in World War I and World War II. It's just an aluminum cup. They have a handle on here that folds, and they have a little bracket here to lock the handle in place. The canteen will fit perfectly right in there. I also have on here another first aid kit. This is the model 1917 first aid kit. Couple minor little differences, mainly in how it snaps together from the last one I showed you. It's made of canvas. Good Lord, this snaps good and tight. Same kind of first aid kit in it. Again, these things would just have bandages for the most part in it, gauze. The cartridge belts themselves, it's got 5 pockets on both sides. Buckles the same way. Inside the cartridge pockets hold 5 rounds, or I'm sorry, hold 2 stripper clips in each pocket, 5 rounds on each stripper clip. These are 30-06 blanks. These blanks were made by a company in Ohio called Atlantic Wall. They do a lot of blanks for theatrical and World War II. It's my native state. It's not too far from here. I'd say probably a 2-hour drive. They don't really want you to come pick them up in person. They would rather ship them to you, so not bad. It's typically like 90 rounds for almost $50. Stripper clips themselves I have on here. These are more modern, but the only reason I'm using modern ones is for the reenacting. That's why they stay together real nice. But World War I's were pretty much identical. They were just brass. These I think they're aluminum, maybe a little bit of zinc, nickel. You guys are probably getting lots of wonderful views of my bedroom with me moving the camera all around. I also have here, and this is why I carry the magazine pouch I showed you earlier in my tunic, is because this is the belt I predominantly wear. It's my rifle cartridge. And I have my holster. This is a model 1916 holster for the Colt 45. They also have a cavalry mounted one, which has got a swivel on here, and the holster hangs down further on the hip. It's got a leather leg tie, which you'll often see tied up in a little fob like this. Be honest, I was kind of skeptical on how well this Colt 45 would fit in the holster, but after I got it, totally missed there. It fits perfectly in here. Just need to slide it down all the way. So when I wear this in battle, I have a sidearm for protection in case I get in a close quarter combat and can't use my rifle, or have 5 shots in the rifle, 7 in the pistol. Between the two of them, I think I can probably get one of them reloaded fairly quick. Okay, so next thing I want to show you is this is the gas mask bag. Like I said earlier, I do not have my reproduction gas mask yet. I've bought one, ordered it. I bought it in February. This is currently the 3rd day of October, and I'm still waiting on it. So kind of a little upset about that, but this is kind of the way it's been. Most of the gear and equipment I've bought from a company called Shipper Fabric, and I've also bought from What Price Glory. The thing about Shipper Fabric to me is a lot of the guys in the unit I'm joining up highly recommend Shipper Fabric. Everybody I've talked to online about World War I reenacting say Shipper Fabric is the place to go. They've got everything. They've got French, British, Russian, German, American. They've got the whole array. It's a small mom and pop shop. So I don't know. Like I said, I ordered stuff back in February. It was actually February 11th is when I ordered things, including my uniform. They had on their website that uniforms take roughly 12 weeks because they have to custom tailor them. I counted 12 weeks, and I'm like, okay, that should be right about April. No, I didn't get anything from Shipper Fabric until the 1st of June. They were just back ordered and stuff, and I'm just kind of a little upset with that, and I'm sure Heather Shipper probably doesn't like me too much because I've called them constantly and pestered them wanting to know what's up, where's my stuff. But I understand that it takes time to make things. I just would have appreciate it a little bit better from them if they would have just sent me an email or a message and say, hey, it's going to be a little bit longer, and give me a time frame. Instead, it's like, okay, I buy it, order it, pay for it, and nothing. And I spent quite a bit of money on things from them. Last I talked to them, which was about a week ago, the gas mask is the only thing I've got left waiting on, and they're still being in production right now, and so I'm still waiting. They've told me roughly 2 weeks, so hopefully within another week, but I don't know. Aside from just abnormally long waiting periods, the rest of my thoughts on them is, from what I've gotten, the quality of the products are amazing. They are dead on. What I do for my job, I am an assistant curator at a veterans museum that takes care of artifacts of militaria, and we have quite an expansive World War I collection, and I've taken some of my stuff and I've compared it to the original, and the uniform especially, it's spot on. If it wasn't for the moth holes on the originals and some dirt on them, you couldn't tell. You know, if you looked at mine and say, well, yeah, that's brand new, it looks brand new. Other than that, they're made identical, stitch per stitch. So I'm highly impressed with them on the quality of the products. I just wish customer service wise they'd be a little bit more up to date. They're not a bad company. I'm glad to buy stuff from them and would love to buy more. I'm just real hesitant to buy because I don't know if I'm going to be waiting another 9 months before I get my stuff. The gas mask bag here that I've got, I didn't buy this one from Shipper. I actually bought this out of the gift shop at the World War I National Memorial Museum in Kansas City. You can go online on their website and buy out of their gift shop, and they sell these reproduction gas mask bags. They're supposedly more or less a book bag to carry small books, but it's pretty much spot on to an original gas mask bag. There's a divider inside. What I did with mine is I took a wire clothes hanger, cut it up and bend it to make a little bracket that fits inside that the small box respirator would sit on. I went ahead and punched a hole with a grommet, a little brass grommet, and then ran a string, wrapped it around. They would use these strings to tie the bag off to their chest so that the bag wouldn't go flopping around on their chest. Other than that, it's dead on. The same lift the dots. Excuse the mess inside there. I've got quite a bit of stuff in here. I've got extra ammo, got some socks, and then I've got this big giant wool rifle sleeve to put my rifle in when I'm walking around so John Q. Citizen doesn't freak out if someone's carrying a rifle. This day and age, it can never be too careful. Too many wackos with guns walking around going on shooting sprees, and I don't want to be accused of being one if I'm walking around with a rifle. The straps, this is a little bit different than an original, but works the same way. They have this little bit of a T-hook. What they would do, if I can get there, they would actually hook on doing it backwards. And it would shorten the strap, and then they would take the excess and stuff it inside the bag with the mask. The way the masks were worn is they would have the standby position, which they'd have it slung over their shoulder, and the bag itself would be riding on the left hip. You would always wear this side towards the body, and then they would have at the ready position is when you would shorten the strap like so, and they would have it around their neck, hanging right in front of their chest, and the cord would wrap around the chest and tie off at the end, and then the bag would be flipped open with the gas mask actually kind of hanging out, so that when they're in the trenches, if they underwent a gas attack, they could quickly grab it out. They'd take their helmets off, throw the gas mask on, and put their helmet back on. The chin strap in the helmet I was showing you earlier is a single piece. It doesn't buckle. So a lot of the times the chin strap would actually be worn at the back of your head, just to allow it taking your helmet on and off quicker. Kind of an old myth. You'd see soldiers wearing their helmets with the chin strap on the back of the head like that, and they'd say, well, that's because if an artillery shell blew up and you wore the chin strap under your neck, the force of the concussion would break your neck. Well, honestly, if a shell had enough concussive force to break your neck with a helmet chin strap, you were probably dead anyways, whether you were wearing a helmet or not. It's more or less so that they could take the helmets on and off quicker to put their gas masks on. Show you real quick too. This is an original gas mask bag with the gas mask in it. This is my great-grandfather's also. Again, you can see the cord on here tied up exactly how I did mine to lift the dots. The buckle, the one on the reproduction, is more of a T shape. This has kind of got a little prong on it, but essentially did the same thing. Attach it like so. I have seen pictures of soldiers wearing the bag in the at ready position where they didn't shorten the strap up. Instead, they would have the strap go across their back, and they would loop the cord through that buckle so it'd kind of stay in place better. I think that's kind of more or less a personal preference thing, but this is how it was actually designed and what it was designed for. Go ahead and show you the gas mask. This is almost 100 years old, so it is kind of fragile. This one is in what they would call a fried condition. It's pretty much dry rotted and fossilized. I can't really open it up. You can kind of hear it crunching a little just moving it around. But you have polycarbonate lens. I've heard some of them are actually glass, but I think these were more polycarbonate. You can see through the lens here, right about where the tip of my finger is. Those were nose clips. They would clip your nose closed, and then at the end of the hose would be a mouthpiece, very similar to a snorkel, which you'd put in your mouth, bite down, and breathe through. The Americans' small box respirator gas mask, they had these brackets on to protect a flutter valve, which went right here. The flutter valve on most gas masks like this one, it's not uncommon for them to basically dry rot and fall off. I do actually have the flutter valve in here. It's basically a little, like, I want to say hexagon shaped piece of rubber, but all it is an exhaust valve. The hose, of course, at the end of the hose, dig this out. go. There's the small box respirator. Now, I've heard and I've read contradicting reports on the small box respirators about them being color-coded. I've been told that they were color-coded to indicate what types of gases they were good to filter out. I've been told that they've been color-coded to indicate what year or manufacturing it was, or even who made it. Again, when the United States entered the war, we didn't really have enough equipment to supply our massively growing military, so we borrowed a lot of gear and equipment from our allies. Mostly we borrowed equipment from the British and weapons from the French. And I kind of find this a funny, ironic bit, because when the war broke out in Europe in 1914, the United States' official stance was it was neutral. Both of those countries, their industry really couldn't keep up with the demand for raw material and equipment. So the United States was making a lot of their weapons and arms for both countries and shipping them over. And essentially we were war profiteering. Germany, really, to kind of combat that, started using the unrestricted submarine warfare policies and would be sinking our ships, which is what ultimately led us to get into the war. I kind of find it funny because if you think about it, we made the equipment, sold it to the British and the French, we get into the war, and we go over there and say, hey, we need equipment. So we were kind of Indian givers. Getting back to the gas mask, the color of the small box respirator, I've been told that black ones were basically used for training purposes. There were green ones, which I've been told were British designed. I've also been told the green ones indicated that they were good for chlorine gas. And then there were the yellow ones, which is what we have here. I've been told the yellow ones indicated that these were made in 1918. The green was 1917. I've been told the yellow was a better filter for mustard gas. So I really don't know. There's various different models of small box respirators, gas masks too, and this is the most common ones I've seen. This is a little booklet that's attached to the filter. Basically it tells you how to repair and maintenance the gas mask. It's got a little chart on it, so if something went wrong you can kind of do quick repairs. I know this is kind of becoming a long video, and I'm trying to hurry it up and wrap it up for you guys. Show you a few more goodies, and I think I may have to do the haversack video separate. Show you some of the stuff I've got laying here on the ground. Got all kinds of... This is my mess kit. Again, World War I mess kits. They had changing models, 1917, 1918. This is a 1918 model. They have a little bit of a more shallow frying pan. World War II models are very similar in design. Their pans were deeper. The silverware I have, this is actually more later, World War II, Korea, Vietnam era, but they did start making these at the end of World War I. What's the big giveaway to me is the knife. This is definitely more World War II and later. The double-sided was the indication of the late 1918.
Hey,
Yes?
when's your last call?